So joining me now in our New Voices series, we've been doing a lot of people from stage left or stage right. This is from stage journalism, if you will. It's the front page editor at HuffPost, which we can discuss all the various iterations of the Huffington Post, the HuffPost, the AOL HuffPost, and yada, 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 that's all right. It's not like my old employer didn't have multiple parents over the years. I think I knew somebody that had an RCA pension and a General Electric pension and somehow got Comcast stock benefits, that they were. So you never know between AOL, Verizon, right? You might hit all the old baby bells at some point.
I mean, if you remember, we were old too.
Right. But I'll tell you what my producer said about you, Philip. She doesn't believe a story about something in the African American community that is being written about until you post something about it. So telling me how much credibility you have these days, particularly on issues that impact African Americans. So it's good to have you here, and I appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you. I really appreciate hopping on with you. I think we're going to have a good conversation.
So let's start with, it sounds like you feel as if you stumbled into journalism, that maybe you weren't, that isn't why you went to school. What did you think you were going to do 10 years ago? And are you surprised to be at one of the nexus of journalism in Washington these days?
I am extremely surprised. I went to school for sociology. I was a teacher in Detroit. 5th grade and 7th grade. I wasn't a great teacher. I can be pretty honest about that.
Why do you think that? Why do you judge yourself that way?
Well, I did a program called Teach for America, and I know
that well. A good friend of mine I went to college with has worked as part of that organization for decades now.
Yeah, and I think I just did not have the proper background that I think I needed for me to be successful. I know that I have friends that have done TFA and are stellar. A lot of them did have a background in journalism, or background in education. I did not. So I was.
Is that a flaw in that system? Because I'm a. If I could wave a magic wand, we'd have mandatory national service, but for people of a certain age. But among the ideas would be, maybe it's Teach for America. But is it, if you don't have an education background, did you feel as if that was a tougher leap?
I really do think it depends on the person, because I know for myself, it took me a long time to kind of get lesson planning down pat. It took me a long time. And when you go to the program, you have to go through Institute, which is like a 4-week or so program that teaches you kind of the TFA way. And so somebody like myself would have needed more than 4 weeks to really kind of get down the intricacies of teaching. And so I know that there are some people who did not necessarily have a background and they were able to do and perform well. It just didn't work out for me. So you go into, I was just going to say, you do your stint with Teach for America. It's a 2-year, what is it, 2-year program minimum? It is 2 year, but I only did 1 year. I was out of there. Okay. Yeah, I was out of there. But after that, I did some substitute teaching. I was a program coordinator for the University of Michigan's dental school. I was kind of just hopping around because I wanted to kind of remain in the education realm. But a friend of mine encouraged me to get into social media or do some work with that, because I was always really active online. This is around the time that Vine was still a pretty popular thing. Yeah. Vine's pretty popular, and I think newsrooms at this time. So this is about 2015. There are newsrooms that are starting to understand things about how influencers are moving. Influencer marketing is becoming a real tangible thing. I think
that's when we actually hired a social media person who literally his only job was to, how do we, it was when we started to dabble in, hey, your full-time job's to handle Meet the Press in the social media sphere.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so these things were happening kind of around me. And I am somebody that's grown up using social media, right? When I was in high school, Facebook was a new thing. And so I had a grasp of social media, I think, quite well. And a friend of mine was just like, hey, you should do something with that. And so I was like, okay, well, what is that? So I did some research. I applied for a bunch of different roles in social media and journalism and just media broadly. Obviously, I got rejected by pretty much all of them because I had no experience. But I applied for a role, a politics fellowship at HuffPost at the time, the Huffington Post.
Right.
And Amanda Turkle, who is over at NBC now, she's the bureau chief. Right. She conducted an interview with me, and I remember telling her, "Hey, I have no background in journalism. Will that be a problem?" And I just remember being like, "No, it's fine. This is the internship. We're going to teach you, right? We're going to teach you." And so that's why I'm a huge proponent for internships and fellowships, because that's how we get new voices into the room. And so I packed up my car, drove from Detroit to DC, and started my internship, and the rest is sort of history.
The Huffington Post you joined in 2015, and HuffPost today. Walk me through the evolution. What was the organization you joined? How similar is it to what it to the organization you help lead today?
Yeah, so right, we were the Huffington Post at the time. So I joined September 2015. So this is kind of, Trump campaign is happening. I'm seeing the end of kind of Obama era sort of politics in general. So it's funny because I have never known a journalism industry or a media world that hasn't been impacted by Trumpism, I guess.
Whatever we want to call it. It's just
whatever you want to call it.
Trump is an era. I call it. It's just an era now. That's right. Whether we like to refer to it that way or not, it is.
Yeah, that's right. So I was there. Although I was an intern, I was there when the decision was made. I believe I was there when the decision was made to put all of Trump's stories in the entertainment section. Right? If you remember that.
I do remember that. That was a Howard Feynman. That was one of the last things Howard Feynman, the late great. He was an old friend of mine. I miss him terribly.
Yes.
But that was. I remember when he made that decision, and I'll just be honest, I wasn't a fan of it because I knew it was going to be symbolically impactful on all of us, if that made sense.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I remember Feynman well because his office, he had his own office in the DC bureau, right on Pennsylvania. And, we could see his room, and I just remember just kind of looking at his room and, seeing how he worked. I think so. Again, I was coming into journalism through the lens of, okay, this is how just journalism is now. Right. And when I was there, at Huffington Post, we had a really, really robust newsroom as far as we had a very strong Black Voices team, for example, or Latino voices. We had queer voices. Now, and as as we've kind of seen, a lot of newsrooms, not just HuffPost, have had to scale it back. Right, had to scale it back. I mean, I've been through several mergers and acquisitions.
You keep surviving all of them. That says something about you. I say that as a positive. Not everybody survives these mergers and acquisitions.
Luckily so, and I think it's because of it's because of the role that I've been in and the role that I've been able to play within HuffPost. HuffPost has been a really instrumental newsroom to me, and having folks like Sam Stein, Amanda Turkle, Ryan Grimm, right? Who were all they were all my internship coordinators at the time.
They all practice the type of journalism I like. They're all troublemakers, and that's what journalists are supposed to be. I mean that in as journalists like say, good trouble. Like that's Ryan Grimm. Like he's unafraid. It's his Substack now that he's doing. It's unafraid. I may not always agree with everything, his tactics, but there's a fearlessness about it that the journalism community needs.
Exactly, and that lens from which I kind of saw them and how they and really just how HuffPost, how we sort of operate, I think is really critical in this moment.
Do you hate hangovers? Well, say goodbye to hangovers. Out of Office gives you the social buzz without the next day regret. Their best-selling out-of-office gummies were designed to provide a mild, relaxing buzz, boost your mood, and enhance creativity and relaxation. With 5 different strengths, you can tailor the dose to fit your vibe, from a gentle 1.5 milligram micro dose to their newest 15 milligram gummy for a more elevated experience. Their THC beverages and gummies are a modern, mindful alternative to a glass of wine or a cocktail. And I'll tell you this, I've given up booze. I don't like the hangovers. I prefer the gummy experience. Soul is a wellness brand that believes feeling good should be fun and easy. Soul specializes in delicious hemp-derived THC and CBD products, all designed to boost your mood and simply help you unwind. And if you struggle to switch off at night, Soul has a variety of products specifically designed to help you get a better night's rest, including their top-selling Sleepy Gummies. It's a fan favorite for deep, restorative sleep. So bring on the good vibes and treat yourself to Soul today. Right now, Soul is offering my audience 30% off your entire order. So go to getsoul.com, use the promo code ToddCast. Don't forget that code. That's getsoul.com, promo code ToddCast for 30% off. What do you think's been lost by, because there's a lot of these identity news portals that have all now gone away. There was a big attempt to have it. We had NBC Black Voices, we had NBC Latino, as all that got wiped away, right? You went through, what do you think's been lost? What was gained by having them, and what's been lost by the mainstream, legacy media's decision to make those the sort of the first cuts that get made as you try to shrink a newsroom?
Yeah, well, I think it just speaks to a fundamental misunderstanding that a lot of newsroom leaders or people or business leaders or whomever are is making these decisions, is that they don't quite understand that these stories are not just boxes to check. Like these are stories that are representative of America, right? Like these are stories that are important, and they're critical to the fabric of how we need to understand one another. Like culture stories, stories about race, ethnicity. This is how these stories help us understand each other better. And so to remove them, I think, is very short-sighted. As you said, NBC has done this. CBS has just expanded their race.
This is across
team.
the board.
It's
you
all
can just
over,
feel,
right?
And I'm going to say it. I won't make you say it. I think there's a bunch of corporate folks who have decided, publicly traded companies decided, hey, we're in an anti-woke environment, so let's not have any of these identity-based news portals.
Sure.
I don't think they're doing it because it's a financial track.
No, I don't. I agree with you. Actually, I don't think so either. I think that there are newsrooms that have unfortunately decided to capitulate in ways that are really unfortunate. And I think that, again, it speaks to a misunderstanding of what journalism fundamentally is. It's to tell stories and to tell stories completely.
Is one of the things that I always thought we were trying to build at NBC, and the argument I would make for all sorts of identity portals and different news portals and different sort of however you wanted to look at it, is, I was believing, hey, we should try to serve everybody. And there's 2 ways you can serve a large, broad population. You can serve them by trying to have one story that somehow is so broad it kind of appeals to everybody but nobody, right? Or you appeal to 25 different communities. Maybe the Venn diagrams don't cross very often, but you're getting 25 distinct communities that you're able to talk to. And then they all, and then they over time, I think, will view the brand through the lens of which they consume your content versus, and it seems as if it is hard to build either type of newsroom these days. That it in some ways, what succeeds is when you just specialize in 1 or 2 areas. Is that maybe I'm overgeneralizing? What do you make of that statement that I made? Do you agree with it or not?
I think so. I think that there are newsrooms today that are succeeding because they have decided to specialize, right? So, trying to think of a good example. So, For example, there are these
Mhm.
these newsrooms that have decided that, look, we don't know if we can do the type of journalism that we want to do at a New York Times or the Post or the Washington
Yeah.
Post or these places. So why not come together, create our own sort of worker-owned outlets or our own
Mhm.
um, newsrooms where we can actually cover the stories that we want to cover. And sometimes that means that now we're going to specialize in this. So I think of the really popular Substacks, right? Like Heated or the newsrooms like the worker-owned outlets like Aftermath. Like these newsrooms are decided, okay, we're going to niche down, and
Mhm.
we're not going to try to be overly broad. We're going to try to
Mhm.
find the newsroom, the audiences, because now audiences are just like, we don't really care about all, all this. We just care about the people that we trust to inform us about what we
Right.
care about.
Although I'd argue that's always been the case. We pretend like, oh wow, this influencer model is such a new thing, and I'm like, yeah, my dad used to have 5 or 6 people that he cared about. I think back then we used to call them columnists. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it just was
No, I
true.
think
You
you're
just
right.
had you had your he had a business guy that he followed, and he liked that one sports columnist, and he like now. Granted, you might have to get it out of 2 or 3 different publications at the back in the '80s. That's the way that worked, but I would argue it's no different than the quote influencers of today. We just don't call them columnists anymore.
No, you're absolutely right. I think what's changed though is obviously the amount
Oh yes,
of just content, right? Or whatever you want to call it. I know content is a dirty word, but the amount of media
are
that's
you a
available now.
content creator or are you a journalist? I get people to say you're kind of in the content creation business now, and I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it.
Yeah, well, content is I know it's a dirty word, but it's content is really just means that we are creating
Mhm.
stuff for online
Mhm.
consumption, right? That's really what it means. And I know it has kind of a interesting connotation now, but back to your columnist point, I mean, nothing really changes. It's some things sort of stay the same. But I think now because we're online and we're able to find, so there's so much
Right,
noise out there that it's really imperative in a way that I would argue did not really exist 50 years ago.
right.
When you were looking for columnists, now you have to really search and really trust the person, the influencer, or the journalist, or the news creator, or whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it, to find that information that you need.
Who do you visualize that you're curating and reporting for right now? Who's your audience in your head? I think we all have an ideal in our head of who we think our audience is. You may know who your audience is, but I'm curious, is it the audience that you get? Is that the audience that you want? Or are you aiming for something
Hmm,
different?
Great question. I tend to have I think I have a pretty broad audience, so it's kind of hard to quantify because I get remarks from people from all over. Like, so I have a Substack, and sometimes I'll check with the stats as far as where people subscribing from or where they like leaving comments from. I mean, I have people leaving comments from like places in even the Middle East, right? Or like places in
Right.
South America, right? So it's
Mhm.
it's hard for me to really determine because on the again online uh, environment that we're in, people can find you in so many different ways.
Mhm.
I tend to think that a lot of my audience is millennial, maybe Gen X
Mhm.
aged black people, but that's actually not true. It's quite broad, and I
Mhm.
think that's in part because I work as essentially a breaking news editor at HuffPost, so people are coming
Right.
to me because they see that.
Right.
So I'm not. Yeah, I mean, audience is it's hard to say.
Um, One of the arguments I make about the state of journalism these days is I say, you know what, there's never been more good journalism available today than at any time in human history. But the media's reputation has never been lower, right? The thesis I have is I always say our curb appeal sucks. Like the front door of journalism is the cable news channels, whether we all want to admit it or not, right? It's essentially the minute people think of media, I think in their head, they just simply visualize one of those 3 cable channels. cable news channels. Do you agree with that thesis? And do you concur that this is actually there's actually a lot of great journalism out there? The problem is sort of the filter.
So I 100% agree that there's great journalism out there. What I also would add to that is that there are more ways to get the journalism out there, to get the reporting out there, right? And so now if you want to do some amazing journalism, you can go out there and use your phone, right? You have the young woman who won a Pulitzer for her coverage of George Floyd's murder, right? She wasn't even a journalist. She was just a person. She was just a person that was chronicling what happened, right? That sort of thing did not even exist, I guess you could say, even 30 years ago, right? Because of the advent of like cell phone footage and things like that. And so that's just one example of how social media and technology has changed kind of how we do things. And now, because of that, there's so much opportunity for young journalists or any journalists of any age, rather, to pursue investigative journalism, to pursue entertainment journalism, to pursue whatever type of journalism that they want. So we have access to it. But I don't know. I mean, when I talk to people about how journalists have been perceived over the years or over the decades, people are like, no, I've always received hate mail, or like I've always, it feels like I've always been kind of I want to say, I shouldn't say enemy of the people. Like they've always felt as though they were,
let me give you a conundrum. Let me give you a conundrum that I think is a challenge for any journalist in this day and age when an algorithm decides, and I want to get to this in a minute and sort of how you make editing decisions, but that if you're pursuing journalism to be popular, you're not a journalist.
Okay.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I've always, and now I say that to comfort myself when I would get the heat and I would feel it. I could get it from the left. Sometimes the left would be harsher than the right. And my EP used to say it's because the left thinks you should be on their side. The right just assumes you're not on their side. So either way, you're getting different versions of this, right? So it's always one of those, I've always said that bias is not in the person that writes the story. It's in the person that consumes the story, right? What bias? We never seem to ask people, what bias are you using to read this story, right? There's always this, right? It's always on the writer or the reporter. Well, you wrote this with bias. And I'm like, of course I did, because I'm a human being. All humans have bias. We're born with original bias. So, but we never seem to hold the reader accountable for consuming information in a biased way. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'd get a critique by saying, I saw your eyes move a certain way. You don't believe this. Or I saw you smirk when you asked a question. Are you sure? Literally, I grew a fuller beard because I was tired of people using my facial expressions to try to consume information. But it would tell me it was always the bias was there. And yet, in order to have a successful independent journalism career, you've got to tap into an audience. So how do you think you can walk the line of telling people what they have to hear rather than what they want to hear in this day and age when everybody gets to essentially consume what they want to consume?
Yeah. Oh, and that's such a great question. I was thinking about that really the other day because there was a really interesting article I was reading from a person I can't remember, but it was about stand culture, right? And how standom has sort of infiltrated everything that we do, right? From that's entertainment or politicians, whatever it is. And so people are looking at journalism and journalists the same sort of way. Like I know people who will tell me, I would prefer to get my news from what's the name of that account? Pop Base or Pop Crave rather than I don't know, CNN, just for example.
Sure. Yeah.
Because they post things that I care about or that I want to see or that I believe in, rather. Usually I believe in this. And what they don't necessarily understand is that, okay, you're doing that, but Pop Crave, like you said, it's a person or team behind this account, and they're posting things that they know that their audience cares about, not necessarily what they need to know, but things that they care about. And that's sometimes that's not always nihilist. That's sometimes different. So I think for myself, I have come to terms with being, I've been in the industry for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I've come to terms with the fact that
you can just say veteran now, by the way.
I'm a veteran. I'm veteran. So I think I'm just okay with understanding that, look, the truth it just is the truth. Like, there's just nothing I can do to alter the truth if that's what it is. So I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that. I don't read my mentions anymore. I don't really go through all that.
That's the biggest thing that is hard for anybody, especially you said you're social media native, right? I'm in my mid 50s. So, I was way into it at first, and then it is when you stop caring about, and then we've come to the horrible conclusion that most people who reply to any tweets hate you. Is what it turns out, right?
Well, they hate the idea of you. They hate the avatar. You are an avatar,
whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's because, and I would say those people were always there. It's just now they have an easy platform to let you know. Before they had to call up a switchboard at NBC or ABC, or they'd write a letter that may or may not get to the person, and yet I think, we're all human beings and it's human nature. And I do think as a journalist, you can't read your reviews. You just can't.
Yeah.
Or you will probably not do the job as well. Yeah.
I think will just go like nuts. I think if you try to keep up with everything, because I think that there has to be a delineation between useful reader feedback or criticism that is awful, and just online just chatter. And where I see this happen a lot, and this is where I try to control myself in this aspect. There are places like HuffPost or like BuzzFeed or other social media, I guess, native outlets that will write stories based off of a couple of random bots or accounts that have something to say about X thing.
Sure.
Right. Or and that, to me, that's
and then sometimes they'll be, here's what social media is saying about X sometimes, right?
Yeah. And that, I think that there's no better example of how we need to just consider who we're talking to online, especially in the wake of these studies and these stories that are saying the internet is almost dead. Like there are people, these are not people online, right? And so I'm always kind of thinking about that, or keeping that.
I was just going to say, it's funny you say that. How much have the bots taken over social media? Is it as bad as some of these stories? I mean, do we think there are more bots than humans on X?
I don't think that there are more bots than humans, but I don't think that there are. I wouldn't say that there's a concerning number of bots online who are influencing what people are talking about and what people are thinking, and I think that is a concern to me. Yeah.
This episode of the Chuck ToddCast is brought to you by Wild Grain. Wild Grain is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, seasonal pastries, and fresh pastas. Plus, all items conveniently bake in 25 minutes or less. Unlike many store-bought options, Wild Grain uses simple ingredients you can pronounce and a slow fermentation process that can be easier on your belly and richer in nutrients and antioxidants. Wild Grain's boxes are fully customizable. They're constantly adding seasonal and limited time products for you to enjoy. In addition to their classic box, they now feature a gluten-free box and a plant-based box. I checked out the gluten-free box, and let me tell you, they have a gluten-free sourdough bread. We got 2 loaves of it, and we've done 1 loaf already. It's a cranberry and almond sourdough bread. It's like the best raisin bread you've ever had, except it's not raisins. It's hit or miss if you mess around in the gluten-free bread world. This is a hit. This is well done. It's not heavy. It doesn't feel like a rock. Anyway, I was impressed. So look, for a limited time, Wild Grain is offering our listeners $30 off your first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/Toddcast to start your subscription. $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/Toddcast. That's wildgrain.com/Toddcast, or simply use the promo code Toddcast at checkout. Always use the code, get the discount. I'm telling you, it's excellent, excellent bread. Black media, the black newspaper in the, basically before the civil rights era was a lifeline to the Black community, right? It was, and there are a lot of legacy Black publications today that are in some ways still thriving because of their, the Chicago Defender's a quick one that jumps out at me. Mm-hmm. How would you describe the state of Black media? And is this, some of the, I'm throwing myself into local news. I feel like if we're going to improve trust in media, it starts local. Detroit actually has a fairly, I was just at a conference there about a month ago, has a fairly vibrant, what I would say, a diverse local media group of startups. And there's quite a few, and particularly one devoted to the African-American community. But generally, how would you assess the state of Black newsrooms today, Black media? And, is it a growing space, and should it be a growing independent space, or should it be a place that is under the HuffPost umbrella, or under the Washington Post umbrella, or under the New York Times umbrella?
This is a great question. I was having a conversation with, this was a little while ago. I had a conversation with Larry Lee. Mm-hmm. He's the publisher of the Sacramento Observer, which is the Black-owned outlet out there. He
oldest one in California?
No, I think I'm not sure, but I know that his father started it. His father started it, and he took it over. And we were having a conversation about this very thing, about Black media. And I asked him, what are your concerns, like as a Black publisher of a Black-owned outlet? And he was saying, like, we've always had issues, like Black media. We've always had to deal with being under-resourced, right, or not being able to kind of always have the staff to do what we want to do. But we keep going. This has been our call for 230 years, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have newsrooms like the New York Amsterdam News, which is the oldest continuously running Black newspaper in the country, and they are finding ways to survive and thrive because they've always had to do more with less, right? So.
So the rise of independent media, where everybody has to do more with less, in some ways, what you're saying is that it's almost like a skill set that gives Black entrepreneurs in the news space an advantage, a leg up, because they've already been kind of working that way.
I think that's right. It's an unfortunate reality, right? Mm-hmm. But it's something that it allows us to be versatile. It allows Black publishers to be versatile, and Black media members to be versatile. I think that it helps to kind of define terms for the Black media too, because when people talk about the state of Black media, and as you know, this can mean a multitude of things, right? Like we could be talking about local news, which there needs to be more investment in local news, because when people are wondering about what's happening in their communities, they go to their local news outlets. They're not thinking about, like, okay, this is Fox News or this is CNN. We just know, like, okay, our traffic light is broken, and they're telling us that this is happening. So there's local news. There's a growing number of Black audiences are getting their information from Instagram, right, and from social media directly. And we don't always know who's behind these accounts that are targeting Black communities and Black audiences.
And are you worried that there's some nefarious actors back here?
Oh, absolutely. But that's not just That's just
It's
not
not
just
just for
black
black.
communities.
I was just audiences, all audiences, right?
No,
Yeah.
all audiences are can be easily influenced by what they see online. Because I was talking with somebody else about this very thing, and they were just like, sometimes I don't have time to do all research about this story. I just can open my phone and see on Instagram this headline. Okay, well, maybe it's true. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe I believe it's true.
Yeah.
So that's one of the concerns I have.
Let me get you out of here on this. Are we still next 5 years? Are we going to continue to see more fragmentation, or do the cycle of consolidation begin in our space, in our general media space?
I think we're going to see more fragmentation. I'm very curious about what that'll look like. So there's a study that Cornell University just published about how the youngest and the oldest segments of our population are just abstaining from social media completely. And so knowing that people are still getting there, in the crux of the study was that people are just moving away from social media, just period. Like, people are moving away from it.
Right.
And so because we're in a space where people are still getting news, I'm just curious, where are people getting news from, right? Like, or who are they going to? Are they going back to like desktops or front pages, like where I work?
And then how do we define social media anymore? Do people still think of TikTok as social media, or is TikTok just a place where they get they're entertained, right?
Yes, that's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, that article, I think, really just focused on like X and Facebook and places like that.
Well, but I think X and
TikTok
Facebook, it's possible that X and Facebook are losing market share, but everything I read is YouTube. And let me ask you this: do you consider YouTube social media?
I do. I think
but it's also got very produced media as well.
Yeah, it's a platform that has. I mean, it's kind of like Substack now, and then this platform does all these different things, but it's still social media because people are. It's a place where people are congregating, where people are having full conversations in the comment section and in the reviews, and it's still, to me, it's still a tool for social media, but it's growing.
Well,
right?
Let me ask you this:
is growing.
When does social media just become media? When do we stop adding the word social in front of it?
I mean,
I could, and that's where I think we're kind of at, and which is why I wonder if we're using the wrong. It's when will, you and I are going to use social media because it didn't. We were alive. We were alive when it didn't exist.
Yeah.
But if you, it's like trying to explain broadcast versus cable. I grew up at a time with broadcast television. Cable was this other thing. You never knew the world where it was two distinct flavors of how television was produced. Yeah. You grew up in a world where it was all on one thing, right? So what I could say broadcast versus cable to you, and I'm going to guess for a long time, what's the distinction?
That's a really great point, because I think if you are 18 years old, there's no difference between TV and YouTube. You probably just watch YouTube.
It's just a screen. I can watch, and I can watch anything via. I did this election live stream, and my wife watched it on the regular television, just using the YouTube there. What's the difference? If you don't, now she knows there's a difference because she grew up with the difference. So that's what I wonder now, these social media studies, we have to be careful, because I think there's now a generation of people who just view social media as media.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that for myself and how I kind of have come up in journalism, social media was kind of a key role in that. It played a key role in getting the news out and not having to necessarily wait on gatekeepers to tell us what was happening. But I think that also will say, like, okay, well, now this is fragmented, because now you can watch the election live stream, like you said, on YouTube, or you can watch creators great things on YouTube. Like, you can watch full podcasts on YouTube, and that might all be just the same thing. for people.
Yeah, it's sometimes the public is ahead of us because we're so stuck with our nomenclatures.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
You've been in journalism 10 years. Do you imagine that's where you'll be for the next 10?
Hopefully. We'll see.
No, I
We'll
mean
see.
that in that, like, is there another itch you want to scratch, or
No, I really love what I do. It took me a little while to find that out, but I really enjoy
this is a career.
storytelling. Yeah, I enjoy this as a career. I enjoy storytelling. I enjoy helping people understand the world, right? And I think that's what we all want to do at the end of the day. And so it's a really amazing opportunity to be able to do the work that we do.
Well, Philip, I enjoyed this conversation. We also sort of talking about the industry a little bit in a ways that I didn't expect us to go, but it was kind of I think I'd like to think someone might learn something from it. So,
no, thank you. This was great.
There's a reason results matter more than promises. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan has become America's largest injury law firm. For the last 35 years, they've recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. It includes cases where insurance companies offered next to nothing, short of shortchanging, seeing if they could get away with it. And Morgan & Morgan fought back, and they won millions. In Pennsylvania, one client was awarded $26 million. It was a staggering 40 times the amount that the insurance company originally offered. That offer, $650,000, whatever it took to sort of get away without paying. So with more than 1,000 lawyers across the country, Morgan & Morgan knows how to deliver for everyday people. So if you're injured, you're looking for a lawyer, check out forthepeople.com/Toddcast or dial pound law, pound 529 on your cell phone. And remember, all law firms are not the same. So give Morgan & Morgan a look. Their fee is free unless they win.